You're listening to a CNA podcast.
Hello there, I'm Andrea Heng, and this is the Money Talks podcast. This episode is brought to you by SkillsFuture Singapore. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that running a business, any kind of business, is not for the faint of heart. Trust me, I've tried it before, didn't really work out. It takes guts, it takes grit, it takes a lot of determination to build something from scratch and then to maintain it and hope that it is able to turn a profit. This is especially so if you are a small or medium-sized enterprise competing with the big boys. If you're an SME owner or planning to grow your startup, you know you need your funds to supercharge that next step. So where are you going to get that money for your ambitions? Let's unpack this now. And to do that, we have not only one, but two guests. Brian Stampe, COO of Commonwealth Concepts, and Wenshan, Director of the Enterprise Engagement Division in SkillsFuture Singapore. Hello and welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hi, hello.
All right. Commonwealth Concept is in the F&B space. You run eateries like Pasta Mania, casual dining. You also have Bedrock Bar and Grill, which is more upscale. So, two ends of the spectrum here. And you have a staff strength of more than 400. At which point in the business did your company feel it was time to scale up and expand?
Well, I think in the early days when we were starting from 200, 300, it was a time where owners come into business to grow. So I think part of the strategy is obviously to expand and grow, and training and learning is definitely one critical component of whatever we want to do. We are a people-centric business, so without that, really hard to move forward.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Brian. From my experience talking to F&B owners, there seems to be one perennial issue that they face, and that is manpower. From hiring to retaining, and then you want to train them as well. There always seems to be not enough people, and the costs are high. So what resources, what aid did you tap on? I believe there are grants that you were able to tap on to do this.
Yes, definitely. A couple of things. I think SkillsFuture, they do provide an enterprise credit, which we actually tapped on in 2022 when we started on some programs. Other stuff that definitely anybody can apply for is when you send people a training, please make sure you submit for absentee payroll submissions.
Oh, that's right.
We've also done bigger kind of trainings. We had recently, over the last 2 years, a career conversion program whereby we merged the skill sets of the staff to increase productivity from the front of house to the back of house. We really tapped on together with the government agencies to get as much financial support as possible. And we successfully got that to the tune of about $100,000. It's quite a bit.
Yeah.
There are also other kind of programs that you can work with. Recently, we've worked with SkillsFuture in their Queen Bee program, and that's together with Grab and Raffles Hotel.
Okay.
Pretty good programs that allow us to, get more bang for buck, and reducing the amount of money we would have to spend for the programs. Basically, they help you synthesize it and break it down so that you can actually run your program subsequently on your own.
Right. And you're talking about a lot of cost savings here. Talk to us about that.
The most critical thing, I think, in F&B business is that, one, you can't send your people out. Like you said, manpower is a problem. First, cost of training programs continually will affect the business. And when things are all doing well, no problem, you can send.
Yeah.
But when there's not enough people, even if you had the money to send, you will struggle to send the people.
Yeah.
You have two men working in a coffee
BCP,
shop.
right?
Yeah.
The business continuity plan.
Yeah. And generally when we work on this is we look at areas whereby programs can be crafted to then flow into an on-the-job training, which we then can conduct in-house and manage that process. So, for example, we talk about the steakhouse you mentioned, Bedrock Bar and Grill. Destination dining restaurants like these have a break between 3 to 6.
Yes.
And then that's where we can schedule some trainings in between. Logically speaking, that's the only time you got, and they definitely cannot travel somewhere else.
I imagine a brand like Pasta Mania, that gets difficult because they're open throughout, correct?
Correct. It requires commitment, will, and planning ahead. There definitely is a cost. You can't send two people from a particular outlet without replacing them with somebody to work that day.
Yes.
So then therein is the cost. So when I say the commitment, It's a commitment to learning and training, and also the commitment to spend the amount of replacement labor such that your full-time staff can go on somewhere else to be trained.
Yeah, and you know what? Having been on the receiving end of that stick, it also feels to the staff member that, oh, my company is invested in me. I need to take this seriously. And it is something also that inspires me to want to, work harder and stay with the company. Wenshan, let's bring you into the conversation. What about SMEs in other industries? So we talked about F&B. What about smaller companies in other industries? I'm thinking logistics, manufacturing, things that tend to be quite labor intensive. What kind of challenges do they face?
Well, I think there are a couple of challenges that companies in other sectors face. But I think one thing that I'd like to point out is that actually, even in other sectors, the manpower issue, the ability to take time off, like what Brian mentioned, to send people to training is one issue that cut across all sectors, regardless of whether you're in F&B, logistics, or even in manufacturing. So this is really a common problem. In fact, what we have done is that we have taken a survey of SMEs across the economy. We do focus group discussion, and we found out that there were essentially 3 common problems that SME faces. Yeah, so the first one, as I mentioned, is about no time to send people for training. How do companies, especially SMEs, when resources is needed on a day-to-day operation, how do they take time off to send people for training? And how can we help SMEs in this area? A second one that they are concerned about is about no money.
Cost,
Yeah, cost is one thing. How do we find ways to elevate the cost of training for the SMEs, particularly where the cost of training may not be very low, some of the sectors or some skill sets that we're thinking of. How do we help them?
Right?
Yeah, could be very specialized or very niche skill sets. And the third area that we have seen is also about no clue, meaning that, there are so many courses that are out there. There are many skills that we all talk about, digital skills, green skills, customer service related kind of skills, technical skills. So which area should I focus my attention to when I want to send my workers for training, and what kind of courses do I want to send to, because there are just so many out there, right?
Yeah.
I think regardless of which sector you're on, these are general pain points that we see from the SMEs that's out there. Yeah.
And it almost feels as if it's option paralysis, except in a different vein, right?
Kind of, yeah.
So every company knows that it needs to balance operational needs and then the business needs, right? And this is very well painted by the both of you. What advice would you give to other SMEs who are trying to strike that balance? What advice would you give to them?
We do have many initiatives that addresses no time, no money, no clue. But I think the key thing is about the mindset. So actually in striking the balance between day-to-day operations, and I think I must acknowledge this is really a real problem that many SME businesses faces, and we should acknowledge that. And versus spending the time to invest in your workforce, nurture them, grow them, develop them, and help your business eventually to grow and go into new areas, for example. To me, it's a mindset thing as a start. And after that, the initiatives that we have to address the pain points will all come in. And actually, when we have done some of our research, we have also found and interviewed employers, SMEs, owners. We collect data. We try to understand more about them. We find that SMEs that focus both on business strategy and people strategy concurrently actually are SMEs that perform better as compared to many. Yeah, so these SMEs have better retention rate of the workers.
Right.
They attract the workforce better because now the workers see that as a recipient of learning is that, hey, your employer value you, wants to develop you. So that is actually a talent retention and talent attraction strategy. We also found that because the workers are more skilled and SMEs who focus both on business growth and also in tandem with that, the people strategy also tend to perform better in terms of greater revenue, greater productivity. Yeah, so actually to me that's the mindset thing. And I know it's tough for SMEs to think about a longer term investment in people, but I think it's kind of like worthwhile at the end of the day.
What were the 3 no's you mentioned earlier? Could you repeat that again?
Okay.
That 3 no's you said.
Okay.
No time.
No time to send people for training.
No money.
Correct. Okay, now, let me
no
test
clue.
you.
Okay, I think I'll add the 4th one.
Okay.
But the 4th one is more positive.
Okay.
I think SMEs have no choice but to go forward.
There we go.
That's a good point.
To chart the training programs.
very good.
Especially given how things are developing around the world today. It's so fast. You can't just catch up anymore. You have to be ahead of the curve almost.
I guess some businesses at a smaller scale, you could get away a year or two without on this, but by the third year, you'll be lagging behind your competitors, and that's where you will see decreasing margins, and then you'll be wondering what happened. Something obviously happened, and somebody obviously gained a comparative advantage to you.
Yeah.
But I think she mentioned key thing is the decision makers need to make that leap to see that the strategy on the people side and the business strategy are actually interwoven. Because who's going to execute the business strategy?
Correct.
So I would say that the leadership view of the SME, especially if they are the key owners, they need to take that step and say, this is what I want to do. And then we find the way. The term no time, right? We all say this for everything. It's a question of you are choosing which time and where you want to spend
How
it.
you want to spend your time.
We need to find a balance. I think that's the critical point. For Commonwealth Concepts, I've worked with Saiful, who heads my learning and development department, in working out all these schemes. We sometimes has a shortage of, let's say, how much money you want to spend.
Yeah.
But then what can we do?
Yeah.
So even beyond touching on grants from the government or any other enterprises, is there a way to create training programs which don't cost so much? It could be internal. You'll be very surprised.
That's
For
true,
example,
yeah.
I wanted to educate my HODs on kind of a profit and loss balance sheet.
Oh, yes.
I made my finance manager do it, and we had a 2-hour in-house session. For example, the materials were then submitted and provided to them to access. We also did a Q&A session.
Wow.
Little snippets. Micro-learning are one of the key ways to
Yeah.
combat the fact that it's not so easy to send people away for an entire day, especially if you're sending in large groups.
Yeah.
And in fact, the trainer it becomes a little sharper in how they want to teach
There
stuff.
you go,
And they
yeah.
know their own stuff even better now in how to communicate to the other head of departments.
Yeah. So other than training grants, what other schemes has Commonwealth Concepts tapped on, Brian?
I want to go back to that SkillsFuture Queen Bee program. When the opportunity was brought forward, I was like, why not?
Wenshan, can you just briefly explain to us what exactly this Queen Bee framework is?
Under the SkillsFuture Queen Bee scheme, we work with industry partners. So these are essentially progressive employers like the likes of Grab and Raffles Hotel that Brian mentioned. Essentially, they are the larger employers, the industry leaders. They step up and say that, hey, I want to look across the SMEs in my value chain, in my ecosystem, and help the SMEs to be able to upgrade and upskill their workforce.
So they're the queen bee at the top, but they are
Yeah,
also
they're the little
caring
bees.
about the hive,
Correct.
the colony. I
Correct.
see.
They are so the SMEs are the little bees.
And they need each other. That's the reality. They need
Correct.
each other.
There are many of these companies or organizations that are willing to work with. They may not cost an arm and a leg. And I think the goal of all SMEs is actually you got to hunt and look for it. The idea of not knowing what is there. True enough, you log on, you look at the government website.
Yeah, you have to
That's
scroll through everything.
But unfortunately, that's the pain you have to go through. And it,
Small pain for big gains.
yes, correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's the way to look at it. Let's talk about money. Brian, the understanding among employees is that if my company sends me for training, it means a pay increment later on or a promotion of sorts in the next cycle. Won't that essentially mean more costs for the company to bear in the long run, though? Because you're paying for them to go for training and then they're expecting this higher salary in return as well. Talk to us about that.
Not exactly. I think trainings can be broken up into different levels. I think there's some functional technical training, which is the basics of doing your job. I think when we send staff for those kind of courses, I do not foresee them looking at that's something that is going to result in them being promoted to the next level. More likely, it's building the skill base for them to operate well and comfortably such that they are very comfortable in their work and they're able to do it well. Now, obviously, when you send staff for training, technically, you will send
Those with potential.
Those with potential,
Yeah.
but like I said, at the base level, for those basic skills, we would have to send majority of them as much as possible. Then you have what we call the more advanced schemes.
Yeah.
Yes. And those are maybe to address maybe certain areas which on a technical basis, they may not have the understanding. So for example, I've recently sent quite a few of my staff for finance for non-finance personnel.
Yeah.
And it was a very big eye-opener.
Great.
And I think it blew their mind a little bit at where their gaps were into understanding the business from a financial statement perspective. So I'm trying to augment their skill. If the culture is about learning and they understand that the company's culture is about learning, they're not going to expect a promotion necessarily, unless we're sending them for a longer term, high investment kind
Very
of
strategic
training.
one,
yes.
right?
And then possibly they'll the purpose is to bring them to the next level. And if we are doing that, normally we would have that conversation with the staff. Hey, I'm going to send you for this scheme is to prepare you for the next level. When the opportunity comes, then you're in a better place to put your name in the hat, so to say.
I think also as employers, you also want to be able to see what results you get to reap from sending your staff for training.
In areas where we have increased productivity, which we have, for example, the career conversion program where we were training the front of house and the back of house to support each other, more like the front of house to come into the kitchen. At the end of that, where there were some grants disbursed, we actually became more productive and more efficient in the store operations, resulting in cost savings, which we then float back into increasing the person's salaries for those that underwent that course. May not be a large amount, but it is to say, hey, thank you for taking that course.
Yes. It's a signal, it's an acknowledgement to say, hey, thank you for committing to us as much as we've committed to you as your employer. Wenshan, do you have anything to add to this in terms of the benefits for both staff and companies that do send their workers for training? Any anecdotes that you care to share?
I do want to advise and hopefully encourage SMEs that learning need not be so daunting. We're not saying, immediately you need to send all your workers and all your officers and staff to a longer term training. There are training that is available that cut across different duration. There's also learning that you can do in the workplace and you can start small. And I think starting small is the start of many great things like what you earlier mentioned. You just got to start.
Exactly.
Maybe I will just tap on the part about the workplace learning. So NACE is the National Centre of Excellence for Workplace Learning. Essentially, NACE would support the employers in developing workplace learning ecosystems.
Okay.
And actually what it does is that it helps the employer to codify knowledge, codified processes, and actually that's also part of building a knowledge management database as well in the companies.
Their own company,
for their own companies.
Correct.
We take time to develop our workers, and we know sometimes when people move, the knowledge may be lost. But if you have in place a good workplace learning system, you are able to codify and retain that knowledge. That one way allows you as an employer to continue to train people.
Any final pieces of advice out there for the SMEs who may not know where to start? That starting point, like that drop-down menu, that's so scary to so many people. They see this long list and they're like, no need lights, okay. What would you say to them? Wenshan, let's start with you.
I think there are a few ways that we have been trying to reach out more to SMEs to support their workplace learning, skills development, workforce development practices. Maybe I'll start with the digital products and tools that we are developing. We have recently revamped our website for enterprises. It is called SkillsFuture for Business. So if you Google SkillsFuture for Business, you'll come to a portal. Essentially what we try to do is that we created a master 5 steps to workforce development. So first step is, do you know what skills do you need to grow in your company or workforce? Okay, these are certain insights, job skills insights that we have, skills reports. These are some dashboards that you can see. And then you can actually look at, even in the dashboard, what are the skills that the industry is looking at?
Right,
what
I
are
was
the
about
jobs?
to get to that. Yeah.
What are the jobs that the industry is looking for? And then with this information, you bring back to your company. Do you have people in these skills areas? We also developed the skills profiler. We work together with one of our partners called Job Crack. So today is free for now. So essentially, we have a skills profiler tool.
That's code for time to take advantage of it
time
now.
To take action. So actually, it's really time limited. We have 1,400 skills profiling tools that's out there, especially for SMEs through Job Crack. And for SMEs, you go through that tool and then you find out what are the skills that you have in your workforce, and then you look at what are the jobs that you have in the company, what skills the jobs require, and then there is a sort of like a mapping that this group of workers they have this adjacent skills that can take on these new job roles, and then have the conversation with them. Then subsequently you talk about what are the funding that is available. For SMEs, we subsidize training up to 90%. For example, for $1,000 course, we already subsidize $900 of that. And then on top of that, you can use SkillsFuture Enterprise Credit to offset our pocket cost. So actually, essentially, it could be really very low cost.
Brian, what would you say to fellow SMEs out there who are struggling with that first step? There's the technical aspect of it. SSG is doing their part. What would you say to them?
I would find the one person in the company that has an affinity for these things. And then I would really work with that one person. So I think the smaller companies is to identify whether it's the owner themselves or that one person, they say, this person understands what this company needs. Now, if resources are still challenged, I think the key thing is to train that 1-2 key critical persons first.
Yeah.
If that person understands how to craft training programs in future, they can then embark a little bit on the journey. So take the little first step. And then when they see the benefits coming in, the investment will increase. And then that will give the SME confidence.
Yeah. And I think that's a very good point. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast to talk about this. We really, really hope that a lot of SMEs out there listening to this will benefit from this conversation. Now, before I let you go, you want to go to the fun stuff. It's called Questions from a Hat. And I have a whole bunch of random questions in this hat. So, Wenshan, we'll go with you. You can hand it to me and I'll read it out for you. Wenshan, what financial advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
For my 20-year-old self, I think is to be able to save money. As we grow older, maybe our salary will increase along the way, but then we have to learn how to now spend below our means. So what it means is that as we earn more, we tend to buy more stuff, right? We tend to buy more, branded stuff or luxurious stuff. But actually, I think when we learn to then say just maintain a certain standard and then we are comfortable with that, and then no matter how much we earn, we save more. Essentially. So it's
reverse psychology almost, right?
Yeah, it's like spending below your means as you grow older.
Okay. That's pretty good advice. I wish I had that when I was 20. Brian, your question is, what was your biggest financial regret?
Oh dear. I think at my undisclosed age, I've probably made a few. It's hard to say. I did some purchases, I think, overseas for properties, which I'm regretting to this day.
Have you sought to rectify them?
I'm still trying.
You know what? They say acknowledgement is always the first step to
Yes,
fixing
absolutely.
the problem. Brian, Wenshan, thank you so much for being on the Money Talks podcast.
Most welcome.
Thank you so
Andrea.
much.
And to you business owners out there, we really do hope there was something to take away from this episode. And if you are a worker as well, it's all about equipping yourself with the skills so that you just can be better at your job. It should all be about self-improvement. If you have any thoughts or questions about this topic or others, slide into our DMs. Before we end this episode, I just wanted to let you know that we'll be taking a short break in December, but hang in there, we'll be back in January 2025. Can you believe it? The time has come already. Now, in the meantime, we are putting together a series of best of Money Talks episodes from this season, so be sure to look out for that. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Music. Don't forget to rate the Money Talks podcast and subscribe so you will always know when a new episode drops. Thanks to the team, Crispina Robert, Tiffany Ang, Junaini Johari, Joanne Chan, To Yuan Yuan, Arjun Balakrishnan, and Saya Wint. This has been Money Talks with me, Andrea Heng. Thank you for listening.